Okay, I want to give an example of a limit that exists and a limit that does not exist. So in this example, I'm representing the amount of money you pay for your data on your cell phone. So here, X is representing the data that you use, and the pricing plan is going to be that the plan costs $10 per gigabyte, up to 2 GB. And then there's a $10 surcharge. So if you go past 2 GB, you get charged an extra $10, and then after that, it costs $20 per gigabyte after that. You know, they don't want you to go over 2 GB. So they make this surcharge and then higher pricing. And the other part of this is that it follows like the Ting plan, like the data, you only pay for what you use. So like if you use half a gigabyte, then it's $10 per gigabyte, so it's only $5. It's not like if you use a little bit, then you pay for one. If you use just over one, then you pay for two. It's not like that. It scales with what you use, except for this extra surcharge around 2 GB. So a limit, if I want to ask what is this function, the amount. So the function is the amount I pay is the y-axis, right? And the input is the data. So the data is the data is the x-axis, the amount of data that I use. And so I might ask about limits of this function. So what I'm asking is how, if my data use is approaching a certain value, how much is my bill going to approach? So you might ask some of your friends, like, you know, how much data did you use? And they might say, oh, I use close to 1 GB. One person says, oh, I used close to 1 GB. It was a little less than 1 GB. One person says, oh, I used close to 1 GB and it was a little bit more than 1 GB. And both of them say, I paid about $10. And if you look at this pricing plan, you might say, yeah, if I use approximately 1 GB of data, then I'm going to pay approximately $10. And kind of the closer you get to 1 GB, the closer to $10 you're going to pay. And in fact, if you use exactly 1 GB, you'll pay exactly $10. And so in this example, it is reasonable and correct to say that the limit as x approaches 1 of this function is 10. So as I approach 1 GB of data use, my bill is approaching $10. Okay, now you might also say, well, how much is it going to cost if I use approximately 2 GB of data? And the answer is trickier in this case because it's not so clear. So if I use approximately 2 GB of data, let's say I use 1.99 GB of data, then I'm going to pay $19.90. I'm going to pay very close to $20 here. But if I use approximately 2 GB of data, but it's more like 2.01 GB of data, then I'm going to get this surcharge, right? So instead of approximately $20, it's going to be approximately $30. And so in this case, if you ask the question, what is my bill going to look like if I use approximately 2 GB of data, if I use close to 2 GB of data, the answer is that it's not clear. I can't tell you what your bill is going to be because it depends if I'm using slightly more than 2 GB or if I'm using slightly less than 2 GB. And so in this case, since we can't tell what the Y value is going to be, what the final cost is going to be, what we say is that I don't know what the limit is. I don't know what the limit of this function is as x is approaching 2 because it kind of depends what side we're coming from. And so in this case, the limit as x approaches 2 of this function f of x, it does not exist.